And in 2023, there's no denying that Bryan Danielson is one of wrestling's most established names, but since his AEW arrival 2 years ago, he's had his fair share of injuries. During last week's Dynamite, Danielson suffered another injury, this time at the hands of Orange Cassidy and Kazuchika Okada, but now, new footage proves that isn't entirely the case. On Collision, it was said that Danielson broke his orbital bone during the October 25th Dynamite, and several wrestling news sources reported that this injury is not a storyline and very real. As revealed in footage shared by a fan though, Cassidy's orange punch does not connect with Danielson's face, and Okada's Rainmaker in the closing moments of the match did not hit Bryan's face, but his chest. So with these moves not injuring Danielson's face after all, why is AEW pulling him from TV? Well, it's because he was actually hurt, just not by these moves. It has been pointed out that Danielson was actually injured during his match with Andrade El Idolo on the October 21st Collision, after Andrade connected with a rolling elbow. The effects of the blow were clearly felt afterwards, but Danielson was able to finish the match, but this injury may mean he ends up missing New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom in January 2024. This is a huge setback for Danielson, who wants to wrestle at the event, and while it remains to be seen if he makes it to the Tokyo Dome, he won't be wrestling anytime soon. With all reports saying he'll be out for the rest of 2023 at least, and Wrestle Kingdom being on January 4th, odds are he'll miss New Japan's Super Show and whatever match was in store. Like we said, this is hardly Danielson's first injury since arriving in AEW, as it was in May of last year that he suffered a concussion during the Anarchy in the Arena match. Bryan Alvarez recently revealed that when that concussion happened, there were concerns that Danielson's in-ring career was over, and even Tony Khan thought this was a possibility. It was noted that the idea of Danielson retiring early haunts Tony Khan to this day, who of course wants to use the highly talented star, but also wants to do what's best for Bryan and his family. Khan was of the opinion that he may have to just pay the remainder of Danielson's contract, and while he would return to action weeks later, he's had multiple injuries since then. It remains to be seen how many matches Danielson has left, as we know he intends to stop wrestling full-time next year, but would likely transition into a special attraction role. Danielson may not want to retire fully at this stage of his career, but with so many injuries piling up, he may ultimately have the decision made for him. Some wrestling news outlets are reporting that Bryan will officially retire in September 2024, but the American Dragon has so far not confirmed that this is the plan. After his 2016 retirement, many fans have been thrilled to see Bryan back in the ring, and here's hoping that he can retire on his own terms rather than an injury forcing him to say goodbye. Over to Raw now, as Candice LeRae faced Xia Li on this week's show, in the latter's first match on Raw since last year, and LeRae's first match since August, but things did not go according to plan. On commentary, Michael Cole referred to Candice LeRae as Candice Michelle by accident, which would prove to set the tone for the match between the two. After a brief back and forth between the two, Lee hit LeRae with a jumping knee and followed up with a cyclone kick, seemingly knocking the Poison Pixie out cold. LeRae was unable to continue, and the referee called off the match, with Xia Li being announced as the winner, which was not the way anyone wanted the match to end. LeRae especially seemed unhappy about the finish, but also seemed very dazed, resulting in medical staff and Indy Hartwell running into the ring to check up on her. Backstage, LeRae was shown icing up with Kaden Carter, Katana Chance, and Indy, and it's unclear if this was a legit injury or just part of a storyline. Many feel like this is a storyline, as if it had been a real injury, she would have been taken to a hospital, not shown on TV with an ice pack moments later. With that said, WWE will have had a team of medical physicians at Raw in case of a real injury, so it's not like her remaining at the show proves that her injury is anything other than real. At this time, LeRae's current condition is unknown, but an update is expected, and suffering an injury in her first match on Raw in months was certainly not what LeRae had planned. Now, Sami Zayn has been by himself ever since Kevin Owens was traded to SmackDown, and on this week's Raw, Zayn was interrupted by the Judgment Day's Rhea Ripley and Dominik Mysterio. The crowd was giving Ripley a great reaction during her entrance. WWE may be forced to turn her face at some point if this keeps up, as she might be too popular to remain a heel. JD McDonagh was with the duo as well in Raw's opening segment, and as we've seen before, this segment would see the Judgment Day use their numbers to ambush the face. Ricochet made the save for Sami, who would then pursue to face Dirty Dom in their match set up last week when Mysterio had a segment with Logan Paul. That segment saw Paul try and force Ricochet's fiancée Samantha Irvin to declare him the new US champion before Ricochet emerged to attack Mysterio and the Maverick. Ricochet has a knack for forcing his opponents to up their game whenever they're in the ring with him, as the versatile high flyer also excels at making his opponents look good. This week it was Dom who scored the win with a roll-up and a handful of tights thanks to a distraction from McDonagh. Post-match, Ricochet cleared the ring and got the better of the Judgment Day as the one and only stood tall despite his loss on Raw. The go-home Raw before Crown Jewel saw the continuation of the Seth Rollins-Drew McIntyre feud, and it genuinely feels like their title match this Saturday could go either way. The pair didn't interact on Raw, but instead cut great promos, with McIntyre explaining his frustration of being unable to celebrate his 2 WWE title wins at WrestleMania 36 with fans. Rollins blasted McIntyre for this, saying some people had it much tougher during COVID-19, and both men are making excellent points in their own ways, which has made this story so intriguing. With that said, it seems obvious that McIntyre will turn heel, possibly aligning himself with the Judgment Day, as the old saying goes that desperate men do desperate things. After Rollins' promo, he was attacked from McDonagh from behind before the start of their match, but it'd be Rollins who'd get the win, even with Damian Priest at ringside. This marked Rollins' first match on Raw in nearly 3 months, with his previous match being on the August 7th show, and his previous singles match being even further back than that. Raw also saw a backstage segment with The New Day, who were dressed up like Finn Balor and Damian Priest, fitting in with the Halloween theme of the show. Backstage, the Judgment Day, and we mean the real one, were seen talking, and Damian Priest stated his intention to cash in his Money in the Bank contract at Crown Jewel. Priest named Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and even LA Knight as potential targets, stating he'd give Knight the shortest title run of all time. You may have noticed that McIntyre's name wasn't brought up, as either Priest doesn't believe Drew will win the title, or he has no intention on cashing in on the Scotsman if he wins the title. McIntyre versus Rollins could really go either way, and with Damian Priest and the Money in the Bank contract always present, it'll be interesting to see who leaves Riyadh as World Heavyweight Champion. This Saturday, WWE will host its Crown Jewel event in Riyadh, and for the second time in his career, Sami Zayn will be part of an event in Saudi Arabia. Zayn wasn't allowed to make the trip to Saudi Arabia for years due to his Syrian heritage, but that changed with Night of Champions 2023, and now Zayn will again be competing at a Saudi show. On Raw, it was announced that Zayn will face McDonagh on the kickoff show, and while it is quite the fall from Zayn main eventing Night of Champions, it'll still be a match at a major WWE event. It was at Night of Champions that Zayn, alongside Kevin Owens, defeated Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns, and Sami hopes to continue his winning ways this Saturday against the Irish Ace. There were plenty of big stars appearing on this week's Raw, but one of the most interesting names at Raw didn't appear on the show. Bodyslam.net were the first to report that Wes Lee was at Raw, and while he didn't appear on WWE's flagship show, he did appear on WWE Main Event, where he faced Akira Tozawa. Lee lost the match, but the fact that he was used on Main Event could be a sign of an impending call-up, so don't be surprised if he's a regular on Raw soon enough. Raw also saw Shinsuke Nakamura continue to be a regular on TV despite his defeat at Fastlane, and it looks like the King of Strong Style has an interest in a certain somebody. On Raw, Nakamura appeared in a vignette asking, "Where are you?" and said the person he's speaking to should do it, show yourself, but there's no word on who he was speaking about. Whoever Nakamura is speaking to, the Japanese superstar has an eye on somebody, and it remains to be seen who will respond to what the former NXT champion is saying. One of the MVPs of this week's Raw was The Miz, who was hosting Miz TV with Gunther as his guest. The Ring General tore into The Miz for his lack of seriousness in the ring, only for the A-lister to deliver a passionate promo, which came across as a potential babyface turn. Miz had a woeful face run in 2013, and his face run in 2019 was not much better, but if WWE pulls the trigger this time, perhaps it'll be different for the two-time Grand Slam champion. The Miz has all the tools to make him entertaining, so a face run can work in theory, but this face run may only last as long as he is in the hunt for the Intercontinental Championship. Having a feud with Gunther would be great to see, given that the pair are two of the greatest Intercontinental Champions of the modern era and have two very different styles in the ring. As we've seen time and again on Miz TV, it wasn't long before things turned physical, as after Miz and Gunther traded insults, the fists were quickly flying. Miz tried to hold his own, but the numbers game of Imperium quickly caught up to him, and as he left the arena, DIY, complete with new theme and impressive graphics, emerged to face Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci in tag team action. Before the match got going though, Miz asked Adam Pearce for an Intercontinental title shot, and Pearce gave him the chance to earn one against Bronson Reed. It was later revealed that a number 1 contenders match next week will decide Gunther's next opponent, pitting The Miz against Reed, with Ricochet and Ivar also being in the match. On Twitter, Reed reacted to this, saying that he'll have to run it back with Gunther soon enough, and that he will beat that Gunt when the time is right. Back in the ring, Giovanni Vinci and Johnny Gargano started for their teams, and it was clear that the two teams had worked together in NXT, given that they gelled so well on Raw. With that said, there was clear tension between Vinci and Kaiser, as the two have been rallying to be Gunther's favorite, and it was DIY who got the win, with Gargano pinning Vinci. This was DIY's first tag team match in 1,300 days, with their previous bout being at an NXT house show against Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, and Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa haven't lost a step. The DIY vs. Imperium match proved to be a great follow-up to the exceptional Miz TV segment, and we'll have to see who leaves next week's Raw with a shot at the Intercontinental title. Whether you agree with what he says on Twitter or not, it's clear that Tony Khan has a lot of passion for wrestling, but he has done some questionable things in recent years. It was reported recently that there have been a lot more last-minute decisions in AEW as of late, reportedly frustrating talent, and now an AEW coach has defended this practice. On Twitter, Jerry Lynn argued that these last-minute decisions are happening to try and keep things confidential, and said that there's a lot of wrestlers and others who want to leak information. Lynn compared this practice to a film, saying you wouldn't go to see a movie if you knew everything that happened, and said anyone who leaks info is damaging the wrestling industry and AEW's product. Tony Khan gets a lot of advice by those close to him, but still books AEW to his own vision, which is leaving talent increasingly in the dark when it comes to their creative directions. The irony in all of this is that fans, especially those supporting AEW, would often mock WWE for last-minute decisions and changes, but now the shoe is on the other foot. Whether Khan changes this practice in the wake of a frustrated roster, time will tell, but for now, the AEW head is doing whatever he can to keep need-to-know information on a need-to-know basis. More from Crown Jewel, as WWE's Mega Show is just days away, with fans excited to see what's to come, but it appears some trolls are trying to ruin the fun. On the Wikipedia page for Crown Jewel 2023, some fans have decided to write the results of the matches for the show, though there's no proof that these are the actual planned finishes. Just in case they are though, we won't be sharing what these trolls wrote, but the Wikipedia page has since been changed back, and now reads as it should. The only way to know for certain what's going to happen at Crown Jewel is to watch the show itself, despite these trolls trying to spoil the fun with these alleged results. For some time now, Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega have found themselves fighting off Don Callis' family, with the heels always seeming to have the upper hand over the Canadians. Now, Jericho and Omega, collectively known as the Golden Jets, will team together again, as on Twitter, Tony Khan confirmed that they will face Daddy Magic and Cool Hand Ange on Dynamite. The November 1st show will also see an 8-man tag team match, pitting Bullet Club Gold against MJF and 3 partners, all of whom remain a mystery at this time. As for Jericho and Omega, neither man is booked for Full Gear yet, but that could easily change when they team together on this week's edition of Dynamite. Now, Full Gear 2023 is mere weeks away from taking place at the Kia Forum in Inglewood, California, but at this time, only 4 matches have been announced. Of those matches, only 3 are set to happen on the main card, and it now turns out that AEW is still undecided on what to do with 2 of their current champions. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Bryan Alvarez revealed that plans have not been finalized for AEW World Tag Team Champions Big Bill and Ricky Starks, even though a clear direction seems obvious. Despite the Young Bucks having won a match to make them the number 1 contenders, AEW has not decided on what match to have at Full Gear, with a bout with the Bucks being a possibility. The Bucks may have won the number 1 contenders match, but it hasn't been talked about since, and it remains to be seen if they get this match at Full Gear, or if another team gets the chance. Whether it's the Bucks or another team, it appears that AEW wants its tag titles defended at Full Gear, but with mere weeks before the show, plans have yet to be finalized. Back to Raw now, and Akira Tozawa and Maxine Dupree were on hand to support Chad Gable and Otis for their match against the debuting Brutus and Julius Creed. For those unfamiliar with NXT, the Creeds have been one of the best teams the brand has seen in years, with their technical powerhouse style akin to the Steiners in the 1990s. Ivy Nile was with the Creeds on Raw, implying that she's been called up as well, and the two tag teams delivered with a nice exchange of takedowns and counters. When Gable and Julius locked horns, their amateur wrestling backgrounds were obvious, though there were some clunky moments that highlighted the team's inexperience working together. The Creeds may have some growing to do, but pairing them with Alpha Academy for their Raw debut helped to put their best skill in front of fans who haven't seen them before. The second half of the match was when things really got cooking, and after the Creeds got the upset win with a tag team finisher, all four men shook hands and celebrated in the ring. Natalya and Chelsea Green continued their feud this week with a Trick or Street fight, and given that this was on the eve of Halloween, both women showed up in their finest costumes. Natalya rocked up to Raw as a sexy bunny, but it was Green and Piper Niven who stole the show, dressing up as the Hart Foundation, with Green playing Brett and Niven portraying Jim Neidhart. It wasn't just the Harts that Green referenced on Raw, as she won the match with a jumping unprettier, a nod to fellow Canadian Christian Cage, as the women's tag team champs had Natalya's number this week. In the main event of Raw, Sami Zayn faced Damian Priest in a follow-up from Zayn being interrupted by the Judgment Day in the show's opener. The match was solid, but the ending without a decisive winner was a cop-out, as Jey Uso emerged to superkick Priest, causing the DQ. After the Judgment Day used the numbers advantage, Cody Rhodes appeared to even the odds, and if you've been watching Raw for the past month, this is all getting very repetitive. Given that the characters are so over, this isn't a massive problem right now, but there's only so many months of the Judgment Day and Rhodes, Uso and Zayn that some fans will be able to take. Zayn may have lost, but the babyfaces stood tall, and this is surely building towards a War Games match later this month at Survivor Series. There's a lot of questions left with this story, such as whether JD McDonagh will officially become a Judgment Day member, and when will Damian Priest cash in his Money in the Bank contract. Whatever the case may be, Raw went off the air with its biggest stars, and for as repetitive as this may seem at times, this storyline remains immensely over with fans. So that was this week's Raw, as the go-home show before Crown Jewel helped build towards this Saturday's event and teased storylines after Riyadh. But what did you think of Raw? Sound off in the comments below. At WrestleMania 39, Shane McMahon made his return to WWE programming as a surprise opponent for The Miz, but would suffer a torn quadricep during his impromptu match with the A-lister. Proving how dangerous wrestling can be, Shane suffered the injury while simply landing on his feet after leapfrogging Miz, and thankfully Snoop Dogg stepped in to save the segment. Now we have an update on Shane O'Mac, as during the Developmentally Speaking podcast, Declan McMahon shared news about his father. He said, "His rehab's going very, very well. He's gotten back to jogging, squatting, and he's starting to work out again. It's getting kind of difficult for him to bend side to side, but his rehab is going really, really well. He's making phenomenal progress. So the doctor said all the time that he's been healing quicker than they thought, and when he tore it, he completely tore his quad tendon. That's a very long, hard recovery, but he's been crushing rehab. He's been doing his thing, and hopefully he'll get back soon. And obviously, you want to see your dad be able to do what they love. My dad loves wrestling." It's unclear when we'll see Shane in the ring next, but one name fans can expect in the future is Declan McMahon himself. When asked which of his siblings and cousins is most likely to get into WWE, Declan named himself without hesitation, as it's clear he's considered this in the past. He said, "Probably me. I mean, the story's already written, right? I mean, the rightful heir, the good-looking, the one who looks like Vince, right? So I think, just in the sense that you could play off the WrestleMania 20 intro, right? Like I posted on Twitter, right? You could play that off and just show that, like, the new generation of McMahon has arrived. I think in that sense, I would. We have such a great family and we're all so supportive of each other, so I think really any of us could potentially want to do it. You know, I know Aurora, Paul's oldest daughter, Triple H's oldest daughter, she's always talked about wanting to do it, but in having my dad and my grandpa's ego, I think I'd be the best." Declan certainly has high expectations for himself, saying he wouldn't mind being the undisputed WWE Universal Champion, which would of course mean the end of Roman Reigns' run on top. At this time, Declan is playing for the Indiana Hoosiers, but we've seen plenty of football players become wrestlers, so it may just be a matter of time before McMahon joins the family business. When the stacked October 10th edition of WWE NXT went off the air, The Undertaker and Carmelo Hayes shared a very cool moment as they performed the Phenom's signature pose on the stage. Speaking to the Black Wrestling podcast, Hayes revealed all about the spot, saying it was crazy to be around Undertaker, who he, like so many other people in WWE, have a lot of respect for. Hayes added that the spot with the pose was not planned, and it was an audible Undertaker called on the ramp, and that the Phenom patted him on the back for a job well done backstage. Tonight, Hayes has the chance to become a two-time NXT champion, but win or lose, we're sure that he'll never forget his time earlier this month with an all-time Legend of the Ring. And we're ending with Rhea Ripley, who has been proving that mommy comes out on top, as she's proven to be one of the most dominant women's champions fans have ever seen. It's not just in the ring that Ripley is dominating, as when it comes to Google searches of WWE's women, the Women's World Champion had a ton more searches than other superstars. A fan took to Twitter and showed off a chart based on Google searches, showing that Ripley is the most popular female WWE star in the US and has a lot of popularity around the world. Ripley was well above the likes of Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Asuka, and Bianca Belair in what is the latest victory for Ripley, who was recently number 1 in PWI's Top 250 Women of 2023 rankings. While Ripley has seen a lot of success, the odds are against her at Crown Jewel, but that won't dissuade the Aussie from giving fans a performance worth Googling her name for.